you very much for having me here today at Talent Fest. I don't want to just be maybe an older person kind of explaining all of the battle wounds that I've taken on in the past, but I did want to, and something that we're working with our teams on today, is kind of highlighting some things that we see in the marketplace and we see in jobs and careers and in life that design can help enable us. And had I known a little bit, I feel fortunate to have had a great career in UX and hopefully much more ahead. When I think back, though, I want to kind of express and work with everyone to kind of show a little bit about some key lessons and things that I feel I would be much more successful in UX had I known a little bit earlier and that I could put into practice a little bit earlier. So, just to jump into it, short on time, let's go to the next slide. Can we move to the next slide? Thank you. Um, our communications practice within Interactive and our UX practice in particular creates digital experiences for all types of web work. We kick up a lot of digital dust from web, display, mobile, portals, applications, complex tools. Our job is primarily focused, and our model for design is really focused in co creation, which is very much focused on people and relationships and working together through workshops. And we do this with very large companies, some of the largest in the world, and companies that include Microsoft, Hyundai, Disney, on all types of experiences for us digitally focused. So, jumping into the next slide, a couple things to keep in mind as we get into it. The first tip or bit of advice is something we don't always think is that experiences really represent how people work. We often think about bad software as a symptom of business dysfunction. That's kind of a quote that floats around. But what we like to think about is an experience is going to be created no matter what, assuming something is done, whether it's a good one or a bad one. The UX designer has a lot of say and a big role in bringing those experiences together through people. What you see on the right is a lot of what we see each day. A lot of people staring at us. Right now, it's not in person, it tends to be in mural. Um, it's our job in UX and as a broader team to kind of coalesce all these great ideas, thinking in disparate ways of approaching problems and solutions, being able to corral all of that information and input together, and be able to kind of put out priorities, create facts, create clarity so that the entire team is clear moving ahead. It's not just something that happens in a design tool or jumping right into design. Getting people buy-in is really critical. So some classes that I might recommend and that I'm encouraging my team to think of as well: design thinking, workshop facilitation, organizational awareness. I didn't think I'd have any interest in, and in fact, it affects a lot of my job each and every day of working with other people in their teams and organizations. Um, put some other additional ones, but think about where you can extend yourself in terms of helping people come together, the way that we like to bring UX to connect the products and services. But UX is also very much in a given project part of bringing people together. So keep that in mind as you start your career. Number two, if we jump to the next slide. One thing that we found, and it happens day in and day out, is that the real problems are not always what are presented to us as the challenge to solve. So, being able, and you can see us over here on the right, back in pre COVID days, working together. And again, we do a lot of that within Mural now, but really looking at creative problem solving, creating awareness of why we're doing what we're doing. It might be 5 pages, but what's the value of those 5 pages? Or if it's an app, how does the user see value? It's really important, and we'll talk more about good questions and answers to try to solidify. But when you think about classes and where you can develop skills, and one of the things that we really need focus on from a hiring and growth perspective is creative problem solving, critical thinking, and logic. We work a lot with our strategy team, and it's been great to see how much logic is applied to common problems. Making sure that we actually understand what the true problem is. We've worked on projects where the client has asked to work on a homepage, and when we looked at data and other evaluation and audits, it was actually all of their product pages. And changing their mind from I think the problem's here to there becomes a big weight for UF to lift, but something that we're actually pretty good at when we kind of put on a data and our UX lens. Um, Understanding constraints, working with clients on short term versus long term or North Star thinking. These are all really critical skills to develop. And all these items that I'm putting down below here are classes that we have access to from LinkedIn Learning. They're available on the web from YouTube training. There's many different design resources at free or low cost or available from your employer. So that's one of the benefits that we see within Accenture, and one thing that we're really taking advantage of this year, from anything from a 5 minute training class to maybe something that's more involved, a 3 or 4 hour course. So keep your options open as you look at different opportunities to grow your skill sets. Next slide. Number 3, this is one of my favorite. I know a lot of people feel like they use one side of their mind more than the other. UX is ultimately a big deal in terms of creating balance between the two. And so for me, day to day, I like to think about how I can explore and how I encourage my employees and my teammates to learn more and develop both sides of their brain. When I look up at the top, it's easier for me to kind of take a look each day at all wards and Behance and Dribble, to see really cool, elegantly designed products on Uncrate. It's not hard for me to sit in 3 hours of traffic to go to the Pink Floyd exhibit up in Los Angeles, or to grab a design tool and fiddle around with different UX or prototyping tools. What's harder for me is to kind of focus on the other sides that actually impact my design. I've had the ability to learn how to code. I used a tool called Webflow to kind of start when I was quite late in life. I was one of the designers that always dodged. I'm not a coder, so I don't need to learn it. I cannot express to you how much I loved every bit of the coding process, or most of it anyway, and how much it added to my design abilities and abilities to communicate with technical teams and other teams beyond just UX. I'm also trying to learn other languages. Spanish aside, I'm focusing on Portuguese right now because that also focuses gives me a little bit more networking capabilities from a European perspective, but it also expresses other types of thinking that I can see from other teams, and it kind of keeps that logic in language. I'm also very much into guitar, and one of the things is learning a language is again learning music and music theory, and a bit like code. So all these are things that I do because they're self-fulfilling, and I hope you find things like that as well, but bringing the best of those things to your job each day, and kind of making sure that you're training yourself and understanding where you may not be as strong and where you can get better, and trying to rationalize both of that, because we get a lot of clients that think creative is UX, and we get a lot of people that think UX is very functional. And in reality, it's a really good mix of both. Next slide. To the earlier points, a lot of your design work doesn't happen in design tools like Figma, Photoshop. It often takes the form of very mundane documents, spreadsheets, data reports, traffic analysis, workshop outputs that are really sketched out and fast, creative briefs. A lot of the work, when you look at the beginning of a project, if we're going to redesign a website or 12 pages, the outcome never changes. There still needs to be 12 pages. But the thought in getting there, like we could all make 12 pages probably in a day or two, but in 3 months, there's a lot more thought process. And with clients, enterprise clients, there's a lot more strategy, research, data. So really building out your chops, their functional requirements, thinking about design operations, how all of this works together and what your handoffs look like, being able to analyze data, taking on little bits of other people's jobs is a really great way to kind of feel out what other roles you might be interested in, how that work applies to your own, and ways that you can grow and differentiate yourself. One of the biggest challenges I see, and especially when you're starting out, is people are often afraid to speak, or new designers are afraid to speak, whether they don't have the right level or the right title. Your voice is incredibly valuable. One of the biggest challenges we see is I don't feel like I have all the data. Well, there's always going to be more data. I don't feel like I have all the input or enough discussions. It's okay. Sometimes putting any type of artifact in front of a client to just say, hey, here's where we would like to start, here's where we would like to go, go. And even if you only get one step of the 10 that you thought you might get through in that meeting, getting them one step ahead is often better than the alternative of churn and spinning. And we'll talk about more about visualizing your ideas to help avoid some of that. But a lot of times in meetings, we'll create a very diverse group of people in a workshop. We'll agree on rules. In 1 hour, we'll have people working together. There'll be a lot of feedback. And at the end of that, we'll walk out with a pretty clear vision of what we think our task ahead is. Maybe it's a prototype or a wireframe or a solution. But getting that ability to kind of get people to take risk, take blinders off, look at North Star, rapidly prototype, think about quick ways to get information in and out. Next slide. One of the biggest things, again, in terms of differentiating yourself as a designer is kind of starting with things that we see every day. The questions that we kind of expect to be asked and answered by our counterparts, we in UX kind of have a different lens of I expect more from you, and that may or may not be a fair assumption from people, but they kind of expect, and it's a big spotlight on ourselves. Say, what do you think? Well, part of that is asking the right questions and really changing some of the questions as they've already been formatted. So we always hear, what's in scope? What if the users want to? What if, what if, what if, what if, what if? And we're not able to solidify on answers, or we create more churn, or as problem solvers in UX, we create more problems than we actually solve. So really think about your questions. There's a lot of great classes, asking the right question, getting to facts, those sorts of things that are great to take a look at. They're available on LinkedIn and elsewhere. But think about what you're asking. Like, what problem does this solve? I know it was asked for, but what am I actually doing this and why? UX designers love to ask why, and it's good to ask that. It's also good to have a POV, and it's also good to develop a POV along the way. But think about, what's the value of what I'm doing? Why am I actually doing this? Who's actually asking for this to be done? If a creative director is asking, it might have a different meaning behind it than if the chief financial officer of the company is asking for a redesign. That might be focused more on financial versus the world's greatest design, creative, or other things. So understanding your audience is really critical. Number 7. Anything that you can do, and there's always a heavy expectation that if you're a designer, you visualize. And a lot of us hear about sketching, and that's a great place to start. There's plenty of classes around sketching early, and testing often. But what I'm telling my team right now is visualize anything that you possibly can and extend your concept to beyond wireframes and sitemaps and flows and pencil sketches. Sometimes a simple list is a good visual. Are these the 5 things, client, that you're asking for? And the beauty of bringing these things to clients in a visual format, first of all, it's risky on an early idea. And we in UX are used to taking a lot of that risk. So if the client doesn't like an idea, we're really okay with it because it's right in front of us and we can respond more easily to exactly what they don't like about that idea, even if it's all wrong. And maybe the next morning it's all right. But when we stay in words and crafted meaning and extrapolated meanings within PowerPoints and things like that, we're not always able to kind of get everybody on the same page. I feel like everyone is actually a visual learner, and we see studies where images and pictures do help people retain and understand bigger concepts. So anything that you can do, from a picture to a drawing to a flow to A, B, and C in a PowerPoint, try to use these tools that and visualization as a tool to kind of really help you and your client narrow in on what you're trying to work on, and get your goals up front. Number 8. This is a shocker for most. Most people go into design because they don't want to be a salesperson or many other roles out there, but sales is an incredibly big part of design that no one really told me about early on. If you have a great idea, you're going to need to sell it. If you have different rounds of review, you're going to need to position what's good and bad about this. Being able to rationalize and understand what your client's looking for, how to read the room, what do the people in the room actually care about beyond what you've put together? How can you create a story from just something as simple as a wireframe. I have to tell stories a lot on navigation. That's not something that lends itself to a great story, but when we think about it's the architecture for the entire house or the entire website, all of the key pages are in a navigation. A story starts to come out where people actually start to care about navigation. So those are the things that you need to look for and cues that you can start to help develop, really understanding and reading your audience and really thinking that while you may have put a lot of work and the team may have put a lot of work into solving that problem, a lot of times at the executive level, they just want the answer. And so it's good to have the way to show your work for many people. But executive sales is really something that there are a lot of classes on, and understanding the mindset of an executive and limited attention spans is really good to take a look at. Number nine, a little bit about personal life. First of all, I encourage everyone to try new things beyond just design things, because what you'll find is that design and life kind of go together. Up here, actually in Sayulita, Mexico, is my daughter surfing. I encourage them to try new things. I take them out, and what I like about it is it preps me. Surfing is a big thing in my life because it preps me because I can't control a lot of what goes on out there, and that's very much like my day at my day at work in UX. I can't control clients or their minds changing. I have to kind of flow with it and work with it. I also like to know how things are built. So I've explored ship building and surfboard building. I've built cuckoo clocks. I like power tools, skateboard stools. But really think about, whether it's coding, what things that you like to do actually apply to your life in design in the 8 or 10 hours or 12 hours you spend at work each day. Think about things that can help you build confidence and push yourself. The worst thing to be in design is static. Design is always changing, it's always evolving. So being used to that, and what I tell my team is get used to, like, be comfortable being uncomfortable. It's okay. And being able to flow with that and work through meetings and being able to quickly think through challenges. All of your other life can kind of help you with that. And the converse is true. When I have challenges at home, it's easy, like, what's the actual problem? What should I actually do first? What's the priority of things I can do? If I want to go surfing in the morning, how do I solution my day so that I can go surfing in the morning? Like, design and life can actually go very much together. And I hope that's a big point as we kind of walk through this and wrap up. Number 10. I thought of Dr. Seuss when this one kind of came up. Everything in life won't work great in UX. Everything on your projects, there is no ideal client, there is no ideal project, there's never enough time to get everything done. All your ideas won't make it to the surface. Ultimately, UX is a lot about balance, and there's going to be some hard falls through it. I've definitely taken my lumps over the years, which is why I'm trying to pass on a little bit of knowledge here. But understanding what went right is often more important, even in the worst, most disastrous, unforeseen, project that you'd never like to work on again. But we've taken, projects to that maybe were too easy for us. They weren't quite the challenge, like some email templates for the UX team, and said, why don't we start to migrate to Figma? Like, the barrier to entry is low. We know we need to be on Figma anyway. The work is here. Why don't we just use it as an excuse? It's pretty simple, low risk. Let's use it to learn Figma. Or we've used it as a simpler project to learn Webflow and have a creative director, an HTML lead, and a UX person who don't know how to code work together for 3 months to figure out how that process works. And we all have come out better as a result of it. And again, some of it's pressure of being put in those situations, like you're going to learn how to code finally, and kind of moving past denial, anger, bargaining, grief into acceptance really quickly. And so make the best of it. Find things ahead of time that you can get out of the project. Maybe you're working with key leaders of the company and it's a very challenging project. It's a great time for you to shine in front of other people. So just keep in mind and really look at it from an outside perspective of what you can get out, what the team might be able to get out of it on projects that don't quite go the way you might have thought. And there are two bonuses. So let's jump to number 11. One thing, and this is a lot about performance and reviews, and I'm very transparent with my team, but really think about what the user experience is of working with you. So think about how others perceive you, what their perceptions of it. How you can counter some of the bias they might bring in, like designers don't understand business. Well, many of us actually do, and that's really what fuels our design and our jobs. So it's really easy to overcome a lot of objections. But what you're most remembered for tend to be soft skills, and they're not necessarily easy skills, but when we think back and people that have made names for themselves, I put over on the right kind of things that differentiate. It's like, wow, they really get it quickly. Wow, they really prototype fast. Wow, whenever they're on the team, they seem to like massage challenges with the creative and the tech team. They work really well with others. No matter what happens in a meeting, they always have an answer. Like, those are really great traits. Some come with experience, but find ways that you can really excel and think about how people perceive you and what role and what impression you're leaving with them. Reducing friction, being able to simplify, being brilliant and being gone quickly. Those are all really good habits to kind of pick up along the way. And it could be anything, but speed is always a good one. Gets it quickly is always a good one, and interpreting those on your own terms is really great. And I think we can probably wrap up on the next slide. I hope as we've kind of gone through some tips, some different trainings, some ideas that might kind of help spirit your career forward, I want to assure you that it is 100% and you're under the broad lens of UX to kind of craft a role in a life for yourself. Look at things like work-life balance. And again, think about if your job 8 hours a day is problem solving, what an amazing life you could have because life is full of problems. But the better you get at it during the day, the more it affects your off hours and your life and relationships. So I encourage my team, like, think about things that make you better as a person because that comes through in your job. And if there's things that you want to do, we have people exploring international options. We have people working remotely from distant destinations. We have people that are taking college or training courses that they've never really been able to take in the past before. So making the effort to kind of design and align your life, setting boundaries, finding ways to get more done in less time, being efficient. There's tons of classes out there. And, whether it's a short term class or a longer term class, really being able to think about how you design your life and how you put the skills and your talents together to make a more seamless and natural fit through your day so that you actually really enjoy your job. And that is what I like. So when there are problems, that is a big part of my job is solving those problems, and that's kind of what drives me forward. For other people, that might be their worst nightmare, but that's what UX is. It really is problem solving, not causing more problems, moving ahead, and really helping people out. And I think that's really what the best part about UX is for me. So, wrapping up on slide 13. I want to thank you. I hope there was a bit of sage advice today. I'm always happy for anyone that wants to reach out or have a conversation around UX, UI, design systems. But just remember that anything is possible through design and digital. It's all ones and zeros. Anything is possible in code. But think about your career as you move ahead and think about ways that your talents can shine and you can have your skills grow and evolve and really enjoy some of both the challenge and the benefit and beauty of working with people and helping solve problems for people. That's really what UX is about. So thank you and hope to see you all soon. And back to Pepe.